Sideways, online and on air on BBC Radio Shetland.
I always had a vision of this place being pretty amazing. It seemed so dramatically far north and away from where I come from, but within the same country. So I was really keen when I was asked to come. I was really keen to come and see it. And I'm going to have this bizarre vision of Shetland as the land of endless sun, you know, which it has been for the last 3 or 4 days.
It always is, of course.
And I like to think it always is, but you probably know better than that. I don't.
Now, you're here for the film festival, showing a few of your films. One of those yesterday was The Requiem for Detroit. How's that gone down here? What's the response been?
Well, I was really thrilled by the response because, you know, I really heard a lot of people afterwards talking to each other, not to me, but, you know, really talking about the themes that are raised in the film. And they were doing that late into the night at the after party or whatever you call it. So that, to me, is the best you can get, really, from a film, is that sense of provoking thought and engagement with the issues you are raising. You know, you want to entertain people, obviously, as well. I think they did enjoy it on that level, but it certainly seemed that they were really quite taken by the themes that the film deals with. You know?
Yeah, it's about the motor industry in Detroit, how that's affected the city over the last century, really. Is that a universal theme you find that people can relate to wherever they are?
Well, I think on one level, you know, when you go to Detroit, and I hope I got that across in the film, it's like visiting the ruins of some great ancient civilization like Rome or Athens, but it happens to be our civilization, so it has this very weird feeling about it, and I think that's a universal feeling that, God, you know, it's a fine line between things working as planned and things falling apart, you know, so to really understand the scale of what's happened in Detroit, you can only really compare it to a disaster like Katrina in New Orleans. And obviously this is a man-made disaster, so it's much harder to get to the root of it. And you've got all the issues of who's to blame, how did it happen, how, you know, so putting it right is a lot more complicated than just building houses after a hurricane. Whatever the scale of the problem in New Orleans, this is bigger and harder to deal with. But it is a malaise that is affecting other parts of America and could well affect, you know, I come from cream tea land in Somerset, you know, but Bridgewater, which is the nearest town to me, is the West Country's Detroit. It's falling apart. It's been abandoned. So you can feel it on your doorstep, and it's something we have to be very wary of when we're you know, in the process of cutting all the infrastructures. I think when you see a place where the infrastructure has gone, then you realise how dangerous it is to get to that point.
Yeah, it's a bleak picture it paints, really. I mean, there's some optimism, of course, towards the end of the film, but generally it's not a pretty picture it paints.
Well, I mean, some of the images are startlingly beautiful in their absolute dereliction and decay. You know, there's an eerie beauty about it on one level. But I was keen to have some hope at the end of the film, because I think, you know, whatever is thrown at human beings, they are incredibly resilient and able to come up with responses that, you know, allow them to transcend the devastation and the apocalypse that is what's happened to Detroit. So, you know, although the national supermarkets pulled out, there's no food to buy in the inner city, really. Their response was to grow their own food. So this urban agricultural movement is a huge thing in Detroit, and beginning across other big urban cities in America. And it has an incredible social effect as well on communities that have broken down into gangs and drugs and violence and guns and all the things that are happening in New York, in Detroit, can in a sense be healed and turned around by getting city kids to realize that they are connected to nature, and that growing things and eating what you grow and so on is quite a healing thing for a community that is blitzed and fallen apart.